This is kind of interesting because you really do need to manage client expectations. If a client knows what to expect, they will be happy. So, before you start working with them, you really want to make sure that the person that you're working with, you have a market that's big enough that you can actually get a really great result. So you want to look at how big is the market. You want to look at who are the competitors. You want to find a baseline so you know what you're dealing with and so you know what you can achieve. And you want to be able to measure the improvement with statistics so that you can show them that. The larger the campaign, the higher the cost. The larger, the more the competitors it's going to be, the longer it's going to take to get a result. So you want to be able to make sure that you're really in a market that works. Don't ever sign up a client that you don't like or who you don't really feel you can help. So do your research first, and you'll be very, very happy on the other end. Also, let them know, what you're doing on their behalf and what their, typical expected results, are. And you should be in pretty good shape because of that. I like to say, under promise, over deliver. Never, 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 never promise something you can't deliver. That's hugely important. The one thing that you can totally get messed up by is promising something you can't deliver. So you do your research on the market and the competitors, and based on that, you give a representation of what can be done. Be honest, even when the news isn't good. Don't get me wrong, okay? Sometimes we've had to say to a client, hey, this isn't working or we messed up. Just being honest in itself can usually handle any upset that comes up. But truth be told, very few upsets come up because we honestly represent what we can do. And also, give a money back guarantee and be willing to give that money back, if the job isn't done right, or they really feel like they have that that there's a trust issue. Monthly, you want to create client reports because we want to measure everything. We're going to measure impressions, which is how many times somebody looked at something. We want to measure clicks, which is how many times somebody went and actually did something. We want to measure the calls that come in. We want to measure the sales, and we want to measure how much use the QR codes had and where they went. So when you start with anybody, you got to start with a baseline. What I usually do is I take screenshots of where a client is on the search engines before I start. And I take the time to find out exactly what they're doing that's successful or not, what their average sales are, and what their customers, how many customers do they usually see, so we can measure success. It's pretty interesting because when you start with somebody and you say to them, what would you consider successful? Oh, if I made $1 million. Okay, good. What do you make now? Well, I make $2,000. Well, you're talking about unreal expectations here. But if you have somebody who's making, let's say, $5,000 a month, and they say, well, I think this would be successful if I made $6,000 a month. Well, now you're talking about, we have a baseline and we have a goal that's achievable. So, screen capture as much information you can before you start so that you have something you can show as, like, when we started, you were here, and where you are now is here. There's free screen capture programs. There's Snagit that you can use. I like using Microsoft OneNote because then you can actually file the pictures and keep them in a notebook that's just client centric. And I have a video on that you'll see on how to manage your business. Monthly, you want to send them statistics in a document, and you want to call them and monitor their progress. You're going to ask them if their sales are up and how's it going. Are they getting more calls? Are there any major changes in their business? It's kind of interesting because sometimes we'll find out that the owner doesn't realize that more calls are coming in. And if the sales don't go up but the calls did, there could be several things that are wrong. One is that the promotion is not targeted correctly. Another could be that just the personnel is not really handling the calls well. And then you want to find out, is there anything else we can help you with? On those monthly calls, it's an opportunity to sell them and upsell them on other services that you can deliver them. So sometimes you start somebody, on just the basics, and as time goes on, you explain and you enlighten them on what else you can do to help them. Also, sometimes we do have to debug if things aren't going well. Um, Rare, but it happens. So you're going to want to find out when was it doing better and figure out what changed. Sometimes it's a different piece of promotion. Sometimes it's a personnel issue and that they've actually got new personnel or somebody who was really good that left. Sometimes technology changed. You know, last week Google changed local search. That's going to help things, but at the same time, it did change. So sometimes Google will make a change that hurts us. We're hoping that's never going to happen, but it does happen. And then sometimes personal problems can get in the way. I don't know how many times I've talked to someone who's just not doing well emotionally, and it affects their business and their business statistics. If they've had a death in the family, a breakup with a husband or wife or girlfriend, a boyfriend, that will affect things. So you want to find out that, and you want to get to know what's going on so you can help fix it. So let's get into statistics a little bit here. Your biggest measurement of statistics that you're going to have right now is your Google Places dashboard. You'll be able to screenshot the activity, the impressions, the tags if they have tags, and when Boost comes around, it'll also be over here. You'll be able to do that. Another thing is dealing with clients, you want to get referrals from them. So when a client is happy, that's when you ask for a referral. This can be when you first sign them up, because guys, when they first sign up, are so excited for the most part. And when they're excited, that's a good time to ask them if they know anybody else who can use your service. And another time to ask them is when once they see some results. I can typically offer a little bit of an incentive. Sometimes it's a percentage off the next month's service, or a gift certificate, or a coupon for referrals. Get your happy clients to write a testimonial. That's another thing that's going to help you. You can use it on your website, you can use it on your Places page, and you can send that review in because it's your reviews. Because I hope you guys get that this marketing will work for your clients, but it'll also work for you. In fact, the best example you can be is to apply it to yourself. So it's an important thing to take a look at. Now I want to get into one last thing that most people don't get into, but it's when to fire a client. I've been running an agency since 2002, and I got to tell you, it's not often, but when I need to fire a client, I do. And it goes into what I call the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule, simply stated, is 20% of your clients will create 80% of your problems, and they'll complain and actually demand more than you really can give them, which in turn will take the really happy 80% and actually create a problem with them because you're so busy trying to make that 20% happy. You fire that 20%, and all of a sudden the 80% are happy and more people walk in the door. And guys with unreal expectations, they're absolutely going to call you 100 billion times and be very, very critical and angry. You don't want that. If somebody's coming in with unreal expectations, if they don't have a product that's going to sell, or they're in a bad location, or their place is in disrepair, you know what? If they think they're going to make $1 million doing that, that's kind of unreal. If you've got somebody with real expectations and you manage them from the beginning, like we went over in this module, you'll never have to deal with that. But there are certain personality types you do not want to deal with. The angry person. Somebody who is yelling at their employees and yelling at vendors and just yelling at their wives and husbands and whatnot. You can never work with an angry person. It's just too much pressure. If you see that look, don't get me wrong, occasionally people get angry, but if you talk to somebody and they're always angry about something, fire them. They're not the kind of person you want to work with. And then that brings me to the next personality type, which is the loser. This is somebody who never wins and is very, very much will tell you that, and he's already set himself up to be a loser. So you don't want to deal with somebody who's considered a loser and has never, ever been successful and doesn't look like they have prospects. Because, when you have somebody who's fairly emotionally upbeat, that's a lot of fun to work with. You got somebody who's a loser and has already made a decision that it's not going to work. You don't want that person. Fire him. And then that brings me to the next personality type, which is the victim. That person, a victim, is kind of interesting because they kind of can suck you in because all these horrible things happened to them and they had nothing to do with it. And if it was only if this didn't happen, everything would be fine. You don't want to work with victims. Just take my word for it, because they'll always be victims. And then they'll be saying things about you because I can tell you that a lot of guys who are victim-y, act like victims, actually aren't victims. They've created all these situations themselves. Don't get me wrong. There's an occasional time where things happen to people, but when you're talking continual, I mean, we're talking about chronic here. We're talking about the person who has chronic, unreal expectations, the person who's chronically angry, the one who's a chronic loser, the person who's a chronic victim. Everybody has their moments, but when you see somebody who's chronically like that, get rid of them, fire them. Which brings me to my last one, which is the criminal. You do not want to work with somebody who's unethical and has criminal tendencies. That person will frankly tell you about how he got stuff under the table and how he doesn't pay taxes and that he's got a cash business and so on and so forth. Dangerous to hang out with criminals, even if it's tacit agreement that you have with them and he wants to pay you cash and not charge tax or whatever. Not that in services that you'd ever have to do that, but the truth of the matter is you just really, it's dangerous to be, somebody's going to be criminal about that. What else are they going to be criminal about? So that's my advice. If you have somebody who's chronically that way, just don't work with them. But keep in mind, there's a very, very, very small percentage of people who you sign up will be that way. So you have nothing to really worry about in the long run. Just know that, because you know when you're working hard and you find yourself feeling frustrated and just don't seem to be getting things done, take a look at that. Look at the 80-20 rule and see, who do you have that you're working with? And you know what? It could be somebody you hired. And although I've given you some really good instruction on how to hire good people, if you've got the wrong people around you, you just need to get them off your lines. You want to do positive things. You want to work with positive people. You want people who want to succeed in their lives, not people who are destined to fail. Because here's the thing. I've just given you the keys to the kingdom here. Think about this. You now have the ability to now open up an agency, and you have cutting-edge technology that other people don't even have a clue on. So, get how exciting that is. And when you're done with this, you're going to be able to really, really rock and roll. This is not rocket science, but it really is achievable. And you can do it from home. An amazing result. And I got to tell you the truth, at the end of the day, if you can get a great result for someone else, it feels so good. Don't get me wrong, I like money and I like getting paid, but the satisfaction of a job well done and actually really doing well is extremely important. And I wish that for every single one of you. I want you to have that sensation of knowing how good it feels to do a great job for a client and have them be really, really happy.